Let's get into it now. A spoiler free movie review of The Iron Claw, a movie I've been waiting to talk about. I've been sitting and living in this movie for so long now, and I wanted to dedicate an entire movie review to talking about how much I love this movie. That after seeing it, easily entered into my top 10 movies of 2023. What the movie is about: the Von Erich family who rose to dominating the wrestling industry in the early 1980s. And I was really into wrestling in the late 90s, early 2000s, but I don't really remember a whole lot about their rise to fame and their dominance in wrestling. And the movie takes place in Dallas, Texas, which I grew up just 30 minutes south of. I was quite honestly surprised how unfamiliar I was with their story, but I think that led me to really loving this movie more because I was discovering all about the Von Erich brothers for the very first time. What the movie focuses on is the sad, sad history of their family and their association with their last name and this family curse. So you have four brothers: Carrie, Kevin, David, and Mike, played by Zac Effron, Jeremy Allen White, Harrison Dickinson, and Stanley Simmons. So what the movie is about is these four brothers and their relationship with their dad. It's not even so much about the wrestling, which does drive the story, but it's not the primary focus. And I think that's what makes this movie so great. I found it really interesting how people were reacting to some of the things in the movie, which I guess you don't really get the tone from the very first opening scene and the first dynamic between the family, because whenever their dad is ranking all of the brothers on who is his favorite and who is his least favorite, people in my theater were laughing. And I found that to be the most depressing thing ever, to think about your dad, the person who is supposed to be the one who loves you the most, the one who wants to see you succeed, is straight up ranking you. I found that to be one of the saddest things out of the entire movie. He is trying to live through them. It's really a textbook situation of a parent trying to live through their kids, and them struggling with making him happy and also wanting to do the things that they want to do, when really at the core of it, they just want to be brothers. And I think that is really what I identified with in this film. I have a brother who is my best friend, and we just happened to grow up loving wrestling. Never tried to actually wrestle. But what I really took away from this movie was that power of having a sibling that you love and you grow up with, and you have these big dreams of doing things that you want to do together. For me and my brother, it wasn't wrestling. We wanted to do music together. We were in bands together from when I was a teenager to in my early to mid 20s. And that was something we bonded doing and we loved doing. Our parents were never supportive of it, but they were never really not supportive of it. So we don't really have that same dynamic here that's in this movie. But seeing them chasing these goals and doing them all together really made me feel that connection that I also had with my brother. And I also went to go see this movie with my brother, sister, my mom, and my wife, Kelsey. So there was just all these dynamics of family happening that I feel like was the main focus and where this movie really shined. But it all came out through the performances, with Zac Efron just really stepping into that lead role, unlike we've seen him. And what I loved about this story is that every single character had their time to shine. And once it was queued up for them, they nailed it. And that is really what leads to the effectiveness of this storytelling. There's just so much drama packed into this movie and so many sad things that it left me wanting more in a very weird way. I've never seen something so sad. And sometimes people tell you, "Oh, this movie is gonna be sad," and you watch it, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty sad." Yeah, you expect of what a sad movie is. It is very rare for me to feel this level of emotion. I told you in my best of 2023 all the times I cried in movies, but this one hit just a little bit different because it was picking at me the entire time. With as tragic as their story is, all of the things were kind of just picking at my inner sadness. But it wasn't until it was all said and done where I realized all those little pickings at my soul, picking at the scab, that all the blood just came rushing out of my body and allowed myself to be in a sadness that I've never really felt before. And I think it goes back to showing how they all bonded as brothers. There's one scene in particular where the littlest brother, who has been kind of an outcast, who out of all of them really never wanted to get into wrestling, he just wanted to play music. So he has this gig, and his parents don't want him to go perform because they don't see that as a real job. But as brothers, they all go sneak out to this party and watch him perform. And it's the one scene in the entire movie where everything is great. And if there was one thing I wanted to see more of in a film like this was more of those bonding moments. I think that really would have drove this movie to a level 5 for me if I just had another good win for them. Because as much as you love all these characters, you feel bad for them more than you feel like, oh, we really reached triumph. And I know there had to be more triumphs that they could have shown in this movie. And maybe they were just leaning on that dramatic element of it, which it really worked. But if I just had one more bonding moment, oh man, it really would have took this movie to an entirely different level for me because at the core, it was really just stripped down filmmaking. There was nothing flashy. There was no emphasis on the action. The action was actually very subdued in this movie, and showing the wrestling in a really raw form, I think is what added to the effectiveness of this film. And it also never really focused on the level of fame that the Von Erich family achieved. It showed some of the things like them signing autographs, but when you look back on history, which I did and went to see some, articles and things they were doing at this time, they achieved quite the level of fame. The movie doesn't focus on it because I think that would kind of take away from the rawness of the storytelling. They also don't focus so much about the actual wrestling business, which I think that would have been an entirely different movie. I think it kind of would have changed some of the dynamics in this story if they would have focused on a lot of how matches are determined. They kind of touch on the fact that wrestling gets criticized for being quote unquote fake, which I hate that criticism. And you watch a movie like this and see how it affects people being on the road, putting your body on the line, having to perform like this multiple times a week. Yes, maybe the outcomes are determined. There's a script, there's an entire plot line of how they want these matches to go. Sometimes things go wrong. Yes, it is sports entertainment, but at the center of wrestling, it is a very real and raw thing. And you see it in this movie. You see how it affects people, how you have to fight through injury. You have to reach that level of being an elite wrestler, being great behind the mic, but also being great on screen. It is so physically demanding, and what a way to earn a living. And again, I don't want to spoil this movie, even though if you just Google the Von Erich family, you realize what happens to every single buddy in this movie. But the very last scene is one of my favorite final scenes in any movie I've seen in years. And I just reached this level that I didn't expect me to reach. These emotions I didn't think a movie could make me feel. And it all goes full circle because there is this song featured in this movie called Live That Way Forever. And I've been listening to it now that the actual version from the movie has been released. And I just keep hearing that song in my head every single day I've been listening to it. And that is something I haven't really felt from a movie. Yeah, maybe I went to go see Wonka and I've been singing all of those songs, but in a much different way. We've gone back to where a song can really enhance a movie, and you hear the song and you associate it with the movie. That's something we don't really get a whole lot in filmmaking right now. So I think that was powerful. For me to seek out a song after watching a movie is a great thing. So many amazing things I can say about this movie, and I hope it'll definitely be in the best picture category. I don't think that Zac Efron, however, is at the level to achieve a best actor win. I think he should definitely get a nomination, but I think it comes down to how he decided to play the character, which I think he nailed. But sometimes when this voting comes around for best actor, you have to have this almost outburst moment to even be considered. You have to be the guy yelling and being over dramatic. Doesn't really have a whole lot of that in this movie, but I thought almost what he did was even harder to do to play this character who they show you how he wasn't the best behind the mic. He's the brother who was great in the ring. He had the physique and he had all that going for him, but when it came to the flashiness of what it's like to be a wrestler, he wasn't the best brother at that. But that is exactly what Zac Efron was showing of how a brother like that can struggle with knowing that some of his other brothers are better at him at different things. and just their internal struggle of not only trying to make their dad happy, but in turn being pitted against their brothers to achieve the same goal, which was a whole other interesting plot point in this movie. So I love this movie, cannot recommend it enough. It's still not streaming, so you still have to go see it in theaters as of now. But as soon as it hits streaming, definitely check out this movie. And like I said earlier, if it just had that one moment to really bring all the brothers together and one more win, it would have hit that 5 for me. And also, when you look at the fact that they left out an entire brother from the story and then didn't mention a whole lot about the youngest brother who died in a really tragic way, and the director has said that he didn't think that audiences could take another hit like that, could take more sadness in a movie, and I think maybe he was right. And some people have said that too big of a story was fit into one movie. I don't think that's the case. It did leave me wanting more, but I think that would have been more effective than if you took this story and split it into like a mini series. I think that would have taken away from the power of everything. And yes, they did change some things as far as the timeline of when things happen to make them so dramatic, because in the movie it's like hit after hit after hit, when in reality there were some years in between there. So I think if you spread that out a little bit more, it wouldn't really have that same sucker punch to the gut in the emotions that it had. So yes, it does leave you wanting more, and you think, oh, if this movie had a little bit more time to breathe, maybe 10 more minutes is all I would give you. I don't think this is the case where a movie would have been more effective as a miniseries. But for the Iron Claw, I give it 4.5 out of 5 championship belts.